In this session, we're going to talk about automatic sample measurement collection. So that's where we're reading a value automatically from somewhere, and without human intervention, we create samples on some sort of interval, as opposed to somebody entering in values on a screen. So we start out, we have some source of data. We have a PLC. Maybe we have some instrument, we have a gauge or something like that, scale, so some sort of instrument that we're interfacing with. It can come from a database. It could be data that's in a file that's passed off from some other system or instrument, writes it to a file. But basically, we come from some source that's going to measure something. We're going to get a measurement. And that is going to get into a tag in Ignition. And that's the important thing. We just need it in a tag. There's various ways you can get web services, all different ways you can get values from other systems and write it to a tag in Ignition. And that's the key. That's what we're looking for, is to get our measurement value in a tag. Once we have that measurement in a value in a tag, then we can configure what we call a tag collector here in our SPC. And part of that is that we tell it which tag to read. That seems pretty straightforward. And we also tell it an interval. And that interval can be a number of things. It could be a shift change. It could be a particular hour of a day, particular day of the month, every 10 minutes, every fifth value change, something like that. So we give it that interval, and we also tell it some other things, what SPC rules to apply to that and look for and such. So I'll go ahead and write that down. What rules and control limits to apply to that whenever we take a sample. So it takes that sample at that interval and it goes over into our database. And the database also, when at that same time, that's when it evaluates the rules and control limits and things. So from here, we get a couple things. We get alerts or alarms that maybe we have a rule violation. And we also can then feed out into our control chart. So if we have every fifth value change, we might have like at 5 o'clock here, maybe we have a value that was recorded, 29, and then at 5:02, 5 changes later, then it went up to 32 or what have you. And we have a bunch of data in there like that. And that's what we use to populate this. And that's also the data we use to go back in time and look for patterns and rule violations. So this is a brief overview of how the flow is when we do automatic sample measurement collection. Now we're going to take a look at setting up the configuration to tell it to take the samples, and then we'll continue on into viewing it in control charts. The first thing is I wanted to make sure that the trial is reset because we won't do automatic sample collection unless the trial is reset. The next thing is I'm going to add a device here, a simulator that just will simulate some values. So if I select a generic simulator here, save that off, that will create some random values for me that we can collect samples on and such. And now I'll create a new tag that will read from that simulating device. So OPC UA server, there's my sim that I just added, and we could say realistic 1. So this is updating a value every so often, every second I believe, and we're getting just some random values basically. Now I'm going to create a collector. So I select the location that I want to add that to. So I'm selecting line 1 SPC. Next, right click on the tag sample collectors, select new, and we'll call it, we'll say pressure. And then select the tag. So we'll select our realistic vet tag that we just added. And we'll select an interval type. We'll collect a sample every 15 seconds. So timed interval seconds and put 15 in there. Now we're just reading a single sample every 15 seconds. So I'm going to select the individual lower control limit and upper control limit. And I'm not going to select any rules for it. Also notice you have an enable, and this enable is available in the tags, and you can turn that on and off. So if you want to turn off this automatic sample collection called pressure, you can, and at any time. So that's in there, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. And that's really all that's required on that side to start taking sample data automatically. In the next session, we'll pull that information out and show it in a control chart.